Hi, this is a breakdown of Hi, this is a breakdown of my new music video, Nirvana. It's my second music video. This is for a local artist named Pariah Pete in Arizona. So this is just a breakdown of it, going over like the crew, the gear I use, color grading, post-production stuff, locations, like a little bit of stuff that I learned, and just a generic breakdown of everything so you could see, because I definitely wish I had something like this. I know some people put stuff out like this, so I'm always super grateful. So I want to see if I can give you anything that's useful.
Sleep, wanna run away. They try and take my peace. No, not today. So just kick back. Yeah.
So the first thing I want to go over is the crew and the gear. These are both stuff that are like pre-shooting type of stuff that you got to figure out. The crew, I had me, the artist, a BTS photographer, a BTS videographer, and an assistant for myself. It's really interesting because I'm used to doing stuff all by myself, but having this and all the things that went into it really was a small crew to consider everything that happened at the end. As for the gear, it was about 40% my gear, 60% rented gear, which is awesome. I use a rental place called Tempe Camera that's in Tempe, Arizona, if you're around there. But so I have my camera, the Blackmagic Pocket 4K camera, like the Sigma 1835, all that Shazam with a tripod. But I did rent an Aperture 300D Mark II, some light stands for that, a big butterfly frame, so like an 8 by 8 frame diffusion frame that goes on their own stands. And then I rented a Ronin S, and then I use a one wheel, one of those electric skateboards, so that I can ride on the Ronin S and make it like a dolly, so it's easier for me to get smoother shots, faster shots. I also rented an Aperture Fresnel 2 times, so it can go on top of the 300D Mark II, just to create a beam, and it can double the output, I think, because we're filming some of this outside, so you needed either a hair light or for it to go through the diffusion frame to make some sort of impact since it's so bright outside. And then the last 2 things I used were a boom arm to go on top of the stands so that I can overput a light hanging over, or a camera doing a top-down shot, stuff like that. And then I also used atmosphere aerosol, which is haze in a can. This is the haze, that atmosphere aerosol that I use. So this will be in the description. I'll put a kit link where you can find all the gear that I use for the music video. I'll just put it in its own separate kit. So yeah. And so I can spray it. I used one part for a car scene that the car was breaking down in, and I would have them spray it as soon as he hit it. And then I used it to fill a room with haze for the doctor scene. So if we break down each of the scenes, there were 4 scenes, basically 4 locations of where each thing was shot. So the first was a pool boy with Pariah Pete in the background as a lounger, and then the pool boy working and singing to the music at the same time. But for that, we just had the basic shot was first the pool boy was cleaning the pool, or pretending to, while he was singing into the camera. We had an 8 by 8 diffusion frame on top of him. So we had 2 stands, and then going up, and then kind of like a roof of diffusion from this 8 by 8 foot. So what that did is just bring the harsh light, diffuse it, so it was looking really nice on his face and his body. And then there we just filmed a couple more B-roll things of me in the water with the fish tank, and so I can get underwater shots, and then stuff from just B-roll of the guy cleaning. And then there we just made sure to get a couple performance shots in different locations of Pariah Pete during the whole song, so that when I'm editing, I can make it however I want, and I'm not missing certain parts of the song because something happened, So after that, our second location was the dog walkers neighborhoods. We had 2 different neighborhoods. One of them was just a rundown neighborhood. The other one was more of a retirement home neighborhood. Both were very interesting contrasts. The rundown one was very gritty. The retirement home was very utopia-like. I used my one wheel and my Ronin S to ride alongside the dog walker. And then we just got a couple shots of that, moved on to the retirement home area. We didn't bring out the diffuser, so we just had a foldable diffuser that we can use to get in there real quick and then dip out when we're done filming. The third location was on the second day of the shoot. It was the garage. So Pariah Pete, his neighbor, has this beautiful garage of all the decked out mechanic type stuff. So that's what we used. He let us use it. It was very nice. He had a really cool mechanic's jacket, which is what you could see the actor in that one, the mechanic, wearing. So it was really cool to be able to have that. And then for that, I filmed handheld for most of those. The one tip was the shot where the actor is lifting up the hood. You can see it for a little bit. So it looks like the camera is inside of the hood of the car as he's opening it. What I had him do was just pretend that there was a hood there and open it up with his hands exactly like this. And then I edited in this black line so that it would start like this. And then when I lift it up, it would look like it's revealing, like the hood is like in his hands when it was just a black, like graduated mask. And then we did a top down shot of Pariah Pete coming from under the car. I just had my skateboard in my car. So I grabbed that, put it under him, and he was able to roll in and out of the car with some tools. And then for lighting for that one, we had diffusion for the part where the mechanic is singing to the camera. We had diffusion on the side of him just for the sunlight. And then for the garage shots, we actually just took our cameras, gave a little bit of rim light, I believe, for some of those. But most of the time, we just shot the lights up into the ceiling. The aperture 300D up into the ceiling, and I just have an older light, small one, pointed up in the ceiling also, just for some softer stuff. I didn't want to have to set up anything in the garage. We didn't have too much time. We were working on the neighbor's schedule, so I just wanted to quickly have something to do. And shooting it up into the garage door that was like rolled up, it was white. It was a perfect bounce light for everything. The final location that we were shooting at was actually Pete's garage. So we went pretty DIY on this entire thing. Everything, all the locations, all the props were all very homemade-esque, which I think was a really cool aesthetic to do with Pete. But so this was in his garage. It was easy because it was pitch black. We could have controlled setting again, and we didn't have to worry about the sun going down, the light changing. We all had our lights in there. So what we did was I took my existing light, I put on an Aperture Light Dome Mark II, and then I made it as an overhead light. So there's like a circle light, sort of like in a surgery room to where they'd have the top light. That's basically what I did. I used a boom arm that I rented also, and I put that on a stand. I rose it up so it was facing down. And then we just had like this table. We put down some plastic cloths that we get like a party table covering thing. We had our actor who was the patient in this scenario. He was laying on the table. We just ripped open part of the cloth on top, and then I made fake blood out of, it's like corn syrup and chocolate sauce and red food coloring. You just mix it up, and then we put it on top of him. We had some tongs and some like a potato peeler or something to use as some surgical tools. Dip those in blood, and then the doctor pretended to do surgery on the guy. And then you could see in some of the shots where the red light is flashing, we utilized the Aperture 300D Mark II's strobe light function. This one was like alarm, like flashing. And we put a red gel over it, and then the assistant pointed it against the garage door so that it was a bounce light instead of being a harsh light. So it was bounce red light. That's how we got that like alarm thing in the whole room. The scene where you could see Pete doing a top down shot. So he's like looking over the camera as the camera's looking up at him, pretending like we are the patient getting surgery done on. We just took the camera, put on the tripod, flipped it up, and then you can see it's blurry around the edges. We actually took some blood and put it around the UV filter on my front lens so I could just wash it off easily. We just put it around, circled it. We flood the room with red light again for some of those scenes, which are probably one of my favorite shots of the entire video. A couple of things that I learned after doing all this is that you really need to either hire people that are going to help you be creative, or be creative before the shoot so that when you're working, you have all your creative ideas done and you could just pull from them. So what I'm talking about is like storyboarding. I storyboarded a little bit before. So I drew stick figures on a piece of paper. It wasn't meant for anyone else to be able to understand or look at and like, oh yeah, that's the doctor, obviously. But for me, it was like I knew what it was. I just needed to see it and like have it down so I can cross it off when we got it done. And I am not forgetting any shots. So I'm stressed the entire time, basically trying to run around with all this gear, and like just my assistant's helping me, but like I'm just still like trying to figure out shots. I'm in charge of all this stuff. We got to get to the next location. We're running out of time. So it's a super stressful process when you don't have a ton of people there. So storyboarding beforehand definitely helped me a ton. And then the second thing I would do next time is I would hire a producer. So if you don't know what a producer is, basically they are like the CEO of the production, more like the business side of the production. So they're handling all like payments, rentals. They're doing like working with the actors. They're working with like food and getting everything done, make sure everything's on schedule. You know, as being the director and editor and colorist and also basically producer of everything, it was stressful. So I wasn't able to focus on, what's going to be a really cool shot that I haven't thought of yet. I'm like, let's get this done in the coolest way possible. The entire time I'm like, all right, let's just get it done. All right, we got to get lunch. Shoot, what time is it? You know, having the producer just would allow me to be creative like I would want to when I'm filming a music video. Otherwise, it's just pure business for me and all stress. So I have my laptop here, and going over the color grading, I think the first thing I want to go over is the shot with the pool boy. My computer's really slow, so this might be really laggy and the fan's probably going to go berserk. But if we start off, you can see this is the finished look. I don't really think I know exactly what I'm doing with color grading. I'm not a professional, but I know what I want, and I somehow find a way to get it, even if it's not the right way. So it starts off like this. I have exposure, saturation, look, skin, hue, curve, and highlights. So just the exposure starts off with like over here on the waveform, I don't know, get the highlights up to the line. Shadows, just keep it right down at the line. This looks alright. Saturation, turn it on, and I'm hitting Command D to turn these on and off. And then to make a new layer, I believe it's Alt S. Turning the saturation on already helps, makes it look a lot better than the log that we started with. But I wanted something that was more vibrant and, you know, match the mood of the pool with the blue and the background and like the inflatables and stuff like that. So look is just like, meaning looks like we did some green, a little bit of green shadows, a little bit orange in the mids, and then a little bit blue in the highlights, which is what I do like to do. I typically just stay with that look for most of my stuff. But some of the scenes were different, which you'll see later. And then skin is where I would, if I click Shift H, I'm able to see my highlight. So you can see I use this with a mixture of setting on these. And then I also use like the feathering right here and stuff like that. I was able to get a nice selection of the skin tone. So from the skin tone, I would start with some reds in the shadows, orange in the mid-tones, and then for the highlights, I would also make it a little bit blue. And then I just separate the hue and look. So look, I just mainly do the wheels, the color wheels to just affect that. And then the hue, I would go over here into like the curves panel and do start with like hue. The greens are a little bit shifted from like a warmer green to a cooler green. And then the blue is shifted a little bit too. And then saturation, this is where I can go through and create a saturated look without saturating the entire thing. So I can get like the greens pretty saturated without having to, you know, like make the orange just blaring. So I can get like a colorful look, a poppy look without sacrificing and making it look cheesy. So I raised up the greens here, and then the blue for the pool, and then hue, I did a little bit for the greens just to make them nicer in the image. So you can see with the hue is off, and then the hue is on. A little bit of a difference. The curve, again, not much, you can tell here. Off, and then that's on. So it adds a little bit more contrast. Basically, I do the same curve for all of my stuff. It's like an S, but I have right here, one right there, one in the middle, and then two for the lower part. Typically, I take this one and drag it down a little bit, and then I mess with this bottom one right here, pull it down, and then this one typically stays there. If not, pull it down too. So you can see like the bottom will drastically just affect those deeper shadows. And then this top one I don't typically use unless I want to affect the highlights, which you will see over on this like concrete part over here. It will change how the highlights react, making them stronger. But in this case, I have a separate layer just for the highlights. So I would select the brightest parts of the image using this eyedropper tool thing. So yeah, so the highlights, you can see those are off and now it's on. Basically you could see it just cools down the sidewalk over there. Sometimes, so what I do with this, I select them and then I use the curves over here to adjust the highlights. Same S-curve thing, and then take the top right one and drag it down a little bit. And I can also do the highlights over on the control wheels and stuff. But basically, so that's on and then that's off. It just depends on what you like. I didn't want that to be distracting from the guy in the middle, so I chose to darken everything in the background, which is a huge tip. The highlight thing I use a ton because it takes, like, if I'm filming out a window and then I have to raise up the contrast, which will raise up the highlights, but then I'll go through, select the highlights and bring them back down to normal so that the dynamic range looks a lot better than after. So that's this one. If we go through again, that's off and then on. All right, we're gonna start with that one. You can see this is after and then turning everything off. Start with the exposure again. Just adds the contrast there. Saturation to get some color back in. I am sweating my butt off. Turn the fan on so the audio is better, but and that's the look. This one I did blue shadows and then orange midtones and then a little bit like yellow of the highlights so I can get a more like rustic, like grunge, garage, like tungsten type of look to it. And then the hue, which didn't do too much, just a little bit with the blues. Again, same concept and same idea of how I did the other ones. Woo! And then curve, which just added more contrast. So that's it. Thank you for watching. I'll put the link down in the description of the actual music video. I hope this helped. I just want to be as transparent as possible and be able to show you guys what a local music video would look like, a low budget music video, and also show you how I color graded it a little bit because I liked it. I liked the grade a lot on that one, so I thought maybe you'd want to know how. So thank you for watching, and my Instagram is down below if you want to say hi.